A very strange chapter. It has absolutely nothing to do with algebra. We actually aren't going to do any calculations whatsoever. We're not going to work with any numbers, so you can put your calculators away for this entire chapter. Which is awesome, if you think about it. You don't have to calculate. What you have to do is something really strange. I am going to try to teach you English. Now, yeah, English and math. Now, how do English and math go together? It's a little weird. Most of this has to deal with, well, if you want to think of it in a realistic sense, lawyers, contracts. When you write something down on a piece of paper and you want it to mean exactly one thing, how do you phrase it? And what kind of key words do you have to use? And what kind of punctuation has to go in a certain place? So a lot of this has to do with law, a little bit. A lot more of it has to do with computers. How do computers do what they do? Well, you tell it to do something, and by what you input into the computer kind of figures out what kind of result you want to get out. Like if you push the H key on the keyboard, you would expect a H to show up on the screen. If you hit Shift H, you would expect a capital H. How does a computer know how to do that? Well, it's a lot of this stuff that I'm going to go over. All right, so this chapter is called Logic. Anybody watch Star Trek? Good old Spock, logical Spock. Logic is kind of funny in the sense that when you say someone is logical, it really isn't saying much because logic doesn't have to make sense. It can be complete gibberish but still be logical. So saying someone is logical is not saying a lot. I mean, they could be just saying a bunch of gibberish. Oh, you're really logical. But they could be saying a bunch of gibberish. The first section is simple statements. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this section because there's really not much to it. But it is extremely important that you nail this one first. Because if you don't get this one down, the rest of them become a little bit more difficult because you'll be making common mistakes. So when we talk about a simple statement, we're talking about a singular idea positively stated. What the heck does that mean? Let's get rid of a few words for simple statements. Simple statements do not use these words. You cannot have the word and, or, but, if, actually it's if then, if and only if, but most people wouldn't use that. Not. Simple statements do not use these words at all. You have to get rid of them. So if it has an and, basically what it's saying, if you're going to the store and the bank, how many ideas are there? Two. Simple statements are singular ideas. So you can't have the word and in there because and connects two ideas. Same thing for or, same thing for but. And by the way, but is the same thing as and. It's just a different way of phrasing it. You cannot have the word not in there because it has to be positively stated. So if I say I am not going to the store, the simple statement buried within that is I am going to the store. So if I say I am not going to the store, that is not a simple statement. To make it a simple statement, you have to get rid of the word not. So the simple statement, I'll just call it an SS, would be I am going to the store. It is a singular idea. I'm doing something. I'm not going to the store and the bank. So this is a singular idea. Okay. Pretty simple, right? You would think. Later, when we start breaking these down, we're dealing with multiple statements. You have to be really careful to write each one of them as a simple statement. And they cannot have the word Not. 10 of you are going to put a not in a simple statement on the first quiz. Guaranteed without a doubt, because you don't listen to me. How many of you do your homework? Yeah. You will this time. Negation of a simple statement can work in two different ways. If you have a statement and you want to write its negation, it's not always just putting the word not in there or no in there. So for instance, I am hungry is my simple statement. The negation of that would be?
I am not.
I am not hungry. Simple, right? Now, the first one is a simple statement. The second one is not a simple statement because it has the word not in it. All right. Today is not Monday. Is my statement. Now notice I didn't call it a simple statement. This is my statement. I am saying today is not Monday, which absolutely is true because today is Tuesday. Right. But the negation of today is not Monday would be
Today is not Monday.
Today is Monday.
So it's the opposite.
Well, you can think of it as opposite, but you got to be careful with that word. You got to be careful with that word. Opposite for certain cases actually don't become negations. Okay, now out of those two statements, which one's the simple one?
Today is Monday.
Today is Monday.
Today is Monday.
Because it does not have the word
Not.
in it. Remember, simple statements cannot have the word not, and, or, but, if, then, if and only if, and all that fun stuff. Okay, global. I only ask this on 2 test questions, and they're usually generally easy. Global is a little different than a simple statement. Global statements are all, some, none, those type of words. And you have to be really careful of these. Like, all Democrats are liberals. Is that true?
No.
No. Some lean towards the center and all that fun stuff. So usually global statements are a no-no because they're generally not true. So if my global statement is all fish can swim, what would be the negation of that? No, but see, that's not the fish. Some fish cannot swim. We got to get that word not in there someplace. So the negation of all is going to be, right off the bat, some. So some fish, well, we got to get that word not in there. So can not swim. I wonder if there are some fish that can't swim. Do those mud skippers swim? Or do they just jump around in mud? Oh, by the way, while we're looking at this, one of these, the original statement or the negation of the statement, has to be true, and the other one has to be false. It has to be without a doubt. Like right now, I'm always hungry. So this one for me is true, and this one would be false. Today is not Monday is
True.
Funny. Today is not Monday is true. Therefore, today is Monday is false. So either all fish can swim or some fish cannot swim. One of those has to be true, and the other one has to be false. I'm not sure which one it is because I'm not sure if any fish that don't swim. There probably is one.
So global statements are using false.
No. Global statements, just like any other statement, are either true or they're false. If the statement is true, then the negation of it is false. If the statement is false, the negation of it is true. One of them is true out of this list. Some people are nice. What would be the negation of some people are nice? All people are not nice is one way of phrasing it. All people are not nice. What's another way of phrasing this?
Can you say some people are not?
No. Because that's the same as some people are nice.
Some people are mean.
Some people are mean. Yeah, I guess you could say it that way. But instead of saying all are not, there's a way of saying no people are nice.
That sounds so retarded.
These two are exactly the same. They're just worded a little different. When you say all are not, you can also say no one. Right. So all people are not nice is the same thing as no people are nice. So if you see the word no, you might want to replace it with all are not. So I would highly suggest you see no, you replace it with all are not. And that way you can find the opposite of it by changing all into some and getting rid of the word all. For instance, no dogs bite.
Wait a minute.
I love when I walk around the city lake with my two dogs and the little kids are like, do your dogs bite? And I'm like, yes. They do. I mean, all dogs bite. Now, will they bite you? I don't know. Depends on if they like you or not, I guess. But I never say, no, go ahead and pet my dog. Because what if they turn around and bite them? Oh, I say, my dog.
Like for the no people are nice.
Uh-huh.
I thought we have to use not.
But no contains not. It's all are not. No means all are not. All are not. It's just a fancy way of saying it. So when I say no dogs bite, this is saying the same thing as all dogs do not bite. All dogs do not bite. It's the same thing as no dogs bite. But what is the negation of this? Well, the opposite of all is some. So some comes over here. Some dogs bite. Because this side has the phrase not, this side is not going to have the phrase not. Does that make sense? So when you rewrite this as all do not, you have to get rid of the not and you have to get rid of the all. So one of these is true. Which one?
Some dogs bite.
All dogs bite. All dogs do bite in certain situations. They all bite. That's their defense mechanism. It's like saying some cats scratch. They all do, trust me. If they like you or not, they're going to scratch you.
Wait a minute, you said that one was true. Which one you said was true?
Oh, I guarantee you no dog's bite is false.
Oh, okay.
Wait a minute.
That's
All dogs do not. Yeah, some dogs bite would probably be the true one.
That's what I said.
I still think all dogs bite. That's just it. But neither of those say all dogs bite. Neither of those say all dogs bite. Okay. So opposite of all is some. Opposite of some is all. One of them has to have the phrase not in it. One of them has to have the phrase not in it. Okay. Section 3.2. Yeah, that's 3.1. It's not much. 3.2. The biggest thing in 3.1 is the simple statement does not have the word not. That's the biggest part of it. 3.2 is we're going to start connecting them. Oops. We're going to deal with multiple statements instead of a singular statement. All right. One of the first connections I can think of is actually not a connection. It's the word not. We have to be able to deal with the word not. So let's write down a sentence. I am not hungry. Okay. Now, one of the first things you should know about mathematics is mathematicians are lazy. And they do not like writing English because words take up too much time, and plus we don't know how to spell. You'll find that out soon enough. I'll be writing words up here going, how do you spell this? So, I am not hungry is a simple statement? No, it is just a statement. Okay. To make it a simple statement, we're going to change it into I am hungry. Now, is that the statement I started with? No, the statement I started with is still I am not hungry. Now, if I have to keep writing this over and over and over again, I'm going to get sick of writing it. So mathematicians go, well, why keep writing it over and over again if you're just going to be using it the same? So I come down here to my simple statement, and I'm going to call it P. I'm going to call it P. So now when I say P, I really mean I am hungry. Now, I want to get back to my original statement, which is I am not hungry. So what I'm going to do with my P is I'm going to put that in front of it. That literally reads not P. Not P. Which means I am not hungry. So this means I am not hungry, which is the original statement.
So where you get the P from? You just
I just made it
pulled out
up. Yeah, where do you get X from?
alphabet.
Alphabet, and you just kind of use it as a variable. And then you use A, B, and C as like constants and things like that. So this is called symbolic. And this, of course, is called English. Now, there's a lot of places in this chapter where I'm going to ask you to go from symbolic into English, and then English back into symbolic, or vice versa.
So the P represents the simple statement.
The simple statement, right. P is the simple statement. So if you use a letter to represent a statement, it better be simple. The book doesn't always go this way, so be careful. I do. My test will be, if you write a simple statement, you better not have the word not in it. Go ahead. Thank you.
Is that a name for that little squiggly line? Or is
Tilde.
it just symbolic?
It's called tilde. It's on the keyboard.
It's called a tilde?
It's called tilde. But for us, we're just going to call it not.
Nah.
Not.
George, the statement gonna be true, right?
One statement is true. Either the original statement or its negation.
You know what I'm saying?
Simple statements are not always true. But I'm saying, between a statement, not a simple statement, between a statement and its negation, one of them has to be true. Guaranteed without a doubt. One of them does have to be true. Okay, so I'm either going to ask you to go from English into symbolic form, or I'll ask you to go from symbolic form to English, or I'll actually have you do the entire loop. English to symbolic form and then back into English. For some people, they don't like writing symbols. They like writing English. But by the end of the chapter, you're going to want to write things in symbols and not in, and I need you to write them in English. So be careful with that. Okay, so this is the same as not. More symbols to read. Remember, subsets and proper subsets and intersections and unions and elements and all that fun stuff and complements. Same thing's going to go on with logic, except it's not going to have anything to do with sets. Well, so you'd think. All right. The next connection that we're going to use between two statements rather than just one on its own, a true connection, is called a and. What is and called? Do you remember Saturday morning cartoons? Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Well, and is called a conjunction. And there is a symbol for and. What was the symbol for and with sets? Was it intersection or union? It was intersection. The symbol for and in logic is an upside down V. Where intersection in sets was an upside down U. So there's some similarities here. So if I have a statement that says George is hungry and Mary is not cooking, very sexist, but hey. You know who cooks in my household? You. My wife can't do it anymore. So I'm stuck cooking and it tastes horrible. I should be losing weight. The directions for this will be write as simple statements and then symbolic form. Eventually, the green part goes away and you have to understand that's what you need to do. You see an English sentence, your first instinct should be, Write it as simple statements, and then write it in symbolic form, and then do what the heck the problem is asking you to do. So if I'm going to write this as simple statements, how many simple statements do I have?
2.
I only have one. I have 2 statements, but right now I only have one simple one. I need 2 simple ones. So I'm going to call the first one P, and I'm going to call the second one Q. You know that phrase, mind your P's and Q's? I wonder if it came from here. I really do, but I'll have to look up historically. So P is going to represent my first simple statement. Just pick the first one that's in the sentence.
George is hungry.
George is hungry. I didn't have to adjust it or do anything crazy with it. But the second one is not a simple statement, but I have to write it as a simple statement.
Mary is cooking.
Mary is cooking. I have to get rid of the word not for things to work out well with my symbols. Now, the next step is I want to go back to the English statement and write it in symbolic form. So this blue statement up here, I want to write it as symbols. So George is hungry is P. I mean the sentence says George is hungry. Then is and, but and is this upside down V or triangle without the base, I guess. And then Mary is not cooking has to be squiggly Q. So this statement, P and not Q, reads George is hungry and Mary is not cooking. And that would be the symbolic form of the original sentence. Isn't this easy? Do it again. I'll be doing this many times, trust me. How about let's put an or in here. Or, now, and is a conjunction. Or is considered disjunction. What do you think the symbol for or is?
V.
Regular old V. So that's or. And let's see, a sentence. Convert to symbolic form. For example, the world is not blue, or the moon is white. Is the moon white? No? What color do you think the moon is?
Right.
It's white because of its reflection, but if you look at it, I think it's gray. If you're on the surface, it's covered with a gray dust, but it might actually have other colors that we don't know. Alright, so the world is not blue or the moon is white. So if I want to convert this into symbolic form, the first step is how many simple statements, or how many statements am I dealing with? 2. But I want to write them as simple statements, so P and Q. P is? The world is blue. And Q?
The moon is white, not white. The moon is white. It's not white.
Don't negate it.
It is white.
It is white. Because simple statements do not have the word not. The moon is white. Don't worry about the word not. You want to get rid of it. I don't want any words that say not in my simple statement. All right, and then we're going to break it down. It starts off with the world is not blue. It's going to be a P, but you better put the squiggly, because P by itself is the world is blue. The squiggly P is the world is not blue. Next word is or. Yeah, you better be careful of what the word is. That one's or, so this is that symbol. And then lastly, the moon is white. Q. And there's your symbolic form of the original statement. Ta-da! No? Let's make it worse. The next connector is if dot 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 then dot dot dot. This is the one that is going to cause you the most trouble. Why?
If and then.
Because it has two words rather than just one. And or is getting directly replaced with a V. If then it has only one symbol. But there's two words in two different locations. If at the beginning and then someplace in the middle. So when we're dealing with an if then, also known as a conditional, a conditional statement has the words if and then in it. Sometimes it doesn't even have the word if in it. It might just have, I'm sorry. Sometimes it doesn't have the word then in it. It'll start off with if and you have to understand that then is there. But I don't write it that way. The symbol for a conditional is an arrow pointing to the right. Do not change the order of that arrow. It has to point to the right. But this is taking the place of two words, if and then. But it goes where then is. So wherever the word then is, that's where the arrow goes. The if is understood. Kind of like if you're in algebra and you have x on a paper, there's something in front of the x. What's in front of x? You know, if I have x plus 3x, what's sitting in front of the x? It's understood that it's there. So when you're dealing with a conditional, the if is the understood part of it. It's invisible, but it's there when you're writing in symbolic form. For instance, let's go backwards with this one. If I give you that P is and Q is are my simple statements. The bank was robbed, my money is safe. And my symbolic form is that. What do you think I want you to do with the symbolic form? Right in English. Now, P is the bank was robbed. Don't be changing order of anything. P is the bank was robbed. Q is the money is safe. But not Q is my money's not safe. Now, the arrow here goes in place of then, not if. It actually goes in place of then.
So if the bank was robbed, then my money is
That's the important part. You have to go way out front here and put the word if. It's not there, so you have to put it there. So the first thing you see an arrow, there has to be an if someplace to the left. So it starts off with if the bank was robbed.
My money is not
Then my money is not safe. Then my money is not safe. That sounds logical.
It makes sense.
Except that my money's insured and I could care less if the bank is robbed. Alright, what if I have let me just start over here. Uglier. Let's go horribly ugly. Let's put a few symbols together. Put a few of them together. So far we've only been dealing with two statements, but that's kind of boring. 3 statements. In one sentence. Now, yeah, that's still P2. 3 statements. Let's just do a little algebra first. If you have 4 plus 3 plus 5, can you add 3 numbers together all at one time?
Yes.
No. Because operations are what's considered binomial. They only work on 2 numbers at a time. So to add these together, what would you do first?
4 plus 3.
You do 4 plus 3 first, so you would associate these. You would get 4 plus 3 is 7, then you know 7 plus 5 is 12. You would associate two of the numbers together. But do you have to associate the first two first?
No.
No. You could turn around and do 4 plus 3 plus 5 and associate the 3 and the 5 together. That becomes 8, and you get 4 plus 8 is? But the answer doesn't change. Except, what if I did this? 4 minus 3 plus 5.
Order operation.
But I don't want to do order of operations. I just want to talk about, can I use the associative property? In other words, can I group these two together first and get an answer, and group the second two together second and get the same answer?
No.
No. Because 4 minus 3 is?
1.
And 1 plus 5 is? 6. And if we go the other way, it would be 4 minus 3 plus 5. And if I put the 3 and the 5 together, that becomes?
8.
And you get 4 minus 8 is? Negative 4. So parentheses are really important. And sometimes if you shift them, the problem doesn't change its value. But sometimes if you do shift them, the answers become different. It really depends on the symbols between the numbers. Same thing happens with 3 statements. We have to be very, very careful how we group them. Because if we group the first two first and the last one second, by itself, that might be different than grouping the last two and leaving the first one by itself. They might have different meanings. Like this one means 6 and this one means negative 4. Just by shifting, the parentheses around. So logic is not necessarily, this is called associative property here, the top two. Associative property of addition. And it doesn't work when it changes into minus. You have to be careful with that with numbers. Same thing with statements. The properties are not necessarily associative. You have to be very careful how you group them. So if I give you a 3-statement sentence, if the bank is closed and I do not have cash, then we do not separate those words. Eat out. Okay. So the sentence, since it has 3 simple statements in it, there has to be some kind of grouping going on. I'm either grouping the first 2 and leaving the last one alone, or grouping the last 2 and the first one alone. What is the grouping symbol in English? There is no parentheses here. This is English. This is written in, typewriter English. The comma. So when you're talking about in English, the grouping symbol is actually right here. That comma separates the first 2 from the last 2, or the first one from the last 2. Which way is it? First 2 last, or?
First 2 first.
The first 2 first. The bank closed and me not having cash is before the comma, so they're going to get grouped. And we're eating out is going to be by itself, outside of anything that deals with parentheses. So let's start with P, Q, I have a 3rd statement, I better call it something. Let's call it R. If I had a 4th one, I'd call it S. A 5th one, I'd call it T. I would just go alphabetically. P.
The bank is closed.
The bank is closed. Because this is a simple statement. See, the problem with people with these sentences is they start copying. You don't want to copy it, you want to write it. Copying it would include the word if and the word not and the word not. You don't want to include them. You want to write the simple statements. Q is?
I do have cash.
I have cash. You could simplify them a little bit. I have cash. Woohoo. And R?
We eat out.
We eat out. Okay. So when I write it in symbolic form, I cannot change the order of the original sentence. This is really important because people, for some reason, love taking the order of sentences and switching them over. And I never know why they do it, but they do it. So I have to keep the order the same. So the bank is closed starts off with P. And
Upside down.
upside down V. I do not have cash.
Squiggly Q.
Squiggly Q. I like that word, squiggly. Then,
Arrow.
arrow,
R. Squiggly R.
squiggly R. Because it's we do not eat out. Squiggly R. Now, that comma is separating the first two ideas from the last one. So in the symbolic form, I have to group the first two ideas. Now, the arrow is way over here. Remember I said with an arrow, the if has to go somewhere to the left.
Yeah.
It's got to go way out front of the parentheses. So it would be if P and not Q, then not R. And that would be the symbolic form of that blue sentence.
So we'll put the colons in it?
Huh? The comma is the parentheses.
The colons.
Colons. What about the colons?
We don't include it in the answer?
This is just separating the letter P from the sentence. It's like an equal sign.
So when you're grouping those, how would you know when the group sign?
The comma.
Wherever the comma is?
Yeah. The comma
Whatever
separates
it's
it.
joined and whatever the
You
comma
put your
is
finger on the
joined
comma
with.
and you say, how many ideas are in front of it? 2. How many ideas are behind it? 1. All right, how about something like, the I don't know, I'm just making up John. Logic does not make any sense. It's not supposed to. Or it doesn't have to. Oh, has anybody ever read the words in a book, Alice in Wonderland? Alice in Wonderland. If you ever choose to try reading that book, it absolutely makes no sense.
No.
Because the author, Lewis Carroll, had a real name, Dodgson was his last name. He was a mathematician. Specifically, he was a logistician. And he used his pseudonym name to write books, and he would write them based on logic. So if you ever read Alice in Wonderland, everything in there is perfectly logical, but it makes absolutely no sense, especially that Mad Hatter dude. He's crazy. But it is pure logic, and he would just write it for fun. And he became more famous for his books than he did for his mathematics.
Okay, that's kind of weird because I thought logic was supposed to make sense.
Sense.
So if logic
That's
don't,
the misconception of
if
it.
logic don't make sense, then what is logic?
Logic is just a final conclusion based on given statements. Now that conclusion, the original sentence doesn't have to make any sense, but the conclusion is based on those statements will make sense, if that makes any sense.
I'm just
So-
glad to get the information because I'm
Yeah,
just learning.
saying something is logical does not mean it makes sense. It is logical, and I mean, if you go back to Star Trek, there's a phrase in Star Trek that says, the needs of the one do not outweigh the needs of the many. But our whole culture is based on the needs of the one, so we're really not logical. Humans are not logical creatures. Okay, how many simple statements do I have? Or, I'm sorry, how many statements do I have? 3. I gotta change them all into simple statements. Simple statements. PQR, weather, hot, Paul is home, and my TV broke. Okay. I want to convert it into symbolic form. But before I jump into symbolic form, you go through this 3 statements and you find that comma, because that is going to tell you where things are. How many ideas are in front of the comma? 1. How many ideas are behind the comma? 2. That's where the parentheses have to go. They have to go over the last 2. So when I write this down in symbolic form, we're going to get P and
Parentheses.
not
Not Q,
Q
V,
or
R.
R.
Close.
Write them all out first. Get all the symbols down. After you get all the symbols down, the two ideas in the back end have to be grouped. So I better put parentheses around the squiggly Q and the R. Do not put it between the Q and the R because that means something totally different. It does, and I'm going to show you that next. So this would be the symbolic form for this sentence up here. Oh, by the way, in Canada, a few years back, I think it was like 15 years ago, the government came up with a deal with a cable company, and their lawyers worked out a deal how much money the government would give the cable company to run the station. And they were supposed to pay them, I think the company was supposed to pay the government, or the government was supposed to, it was an $850 million contract. $850 million. It cost the government $600 million because a lawyer put a comma in the wrong place. By moving the comma and putting it between the wrong words, instead of them having to pay the entire $650 million, they only had to pay like $150 million, and then they could break the contract because the comma was misplaced. So that was a $400 million comma. I wonder if that lawyer has a job still.
I have a question. Okay, like right there where you're saying like weather hot. Why is the is not there?
What is? Oh, when I wrote them here, these are just simple statements. They're the ideas. If you want, you can write them out. The weather is hot. All
Okay,
is
so
home. My
did put
TV
the
is
is
broken.
in
Yeah, it's
there.
not wrong.
Okay.
As long as you don't put the word not or if or and or then or any of those words, you're fine. So what if I use those simple statements and I write this? Let's say I made that mistake. And I just surrounded the Q and the R. Why does that change anything?
Everything in parentheses is not.
I'm negating the entire compound statement, not us negating a simple statement. So if I was going to write this in English, how would I say it? Well, you say the inside first. Q or R would be Paul is home, or my TV is broke. Poor thing. But that not has to be taken care of because I haven't used it yet. So to use the not, I want to say I'm negating this entire statement. So I'm going to say it is not true that I lost space there. Paul is home or my TV is broke. So when you see a tilde and then a parentheses, it starts off as it is not true. Dot, dot, dot. It's very, very important. You see a tilde touching a parentheses and not a letter on its own. It is not true. That, whatever. Wow. Okay. Let's go backwards. Give me a simple statement.
I am sleepy.
I am sleepy. I am sleeping. I am mad. Can't even spell mad. I am ready to go. Very simplistic. All self-centered statements. I. We only care about one person in this world. Us.
3 people.
Myself.
You said you.
I know. I'm just picking on you. Alright, so. I want to write that in English. Precisely in English. So I don't lose $400 million. What is the first word? Nope.
If I am not.
If. If is the first word. Why is if the first word?
Because you have then.
There's an arrow here, and you have to go way out front with that word if. Now, what's the second part of this?
I am not. It is not true.
It is not true because I have a tilde on a parentheses, and you have to take care of that first. If it is not true, oops, I can't spell true. True that
I am sleepy.
I am sleepy
Or I am not mad.
or not mad,
Then I am not ready to go.
then I am not ready? Not ready to go. Yay! English sentence. Am I done?
Put your comment down.
I need a comma. And where I put it is extremely important. So, I need the first two ideas to be separated from the last idea. So the first ideas are sleep and mad.
After mad.
So it has to happen after mad. So, if it is not true that I am sleepy or not mad, separate, comma, then I am not ready to go. Yay! That is easy.
It makes sense.
It does make sense, and it's funny how many people don't make any sense. Seriously. What time is it? We got plenty of time. There is one more connector that I have to cover. It is probably one of the weirder ones. It is one that you are not used to. There's another connector. And it's not but, because but is the same thing as and. If and only if. It's a very strange one. Most people don't use it. Now, if and only if is not separated. It is in one location in the sentence. Where if then, you put the if out front and the then in the middle. If and only if is actually one phrase. It becomes one singular phrase. So there is one symbol for it. Before I get there, though, this is called a biconditional, which kind of gives you a hint of what it is. A conditional goes in one direction. So a biconditional goes in two directions. So the symbol for it is double arrow. Oh, I've seen it written different ways, like an arrow on top pointing to the right, and an arrow on the bottom pointing to the left, like this. Another way of writing it, and some textbooks will write it this way. They'll literally show both conditionals. But we're going to use a double arrow. Makes life simpler. So, let me give you a phrase that is biconditional. Do you remember geometry?
Yeah.
Geometry? Two lines are parallel. I'll just write the symbol for parallel. I don't want to write the word. If and only if, I did not misspell it. Mathematicians and everybody else is lazy, trust me. IFF is an abbreviation for if and only if. It's like ASAP. As soon as possible. ASAP. If two lines are parallel, if and only if their slopes are the same. This is a theorem, or an idea, I guess, in geometry. And the way it works is this, and this is where a lot of people get confused between conditionals and biconditionals. I've had people read a conditional, flip it around, and think it's still true. You cannot flip a conditional around and make it true all the time. But biconditionals are true in both directions, so it doesn't matter which way you read it. So if I wanted to separate this, it would be, if two lines are parallel, then their slopes are the same. Or I can go backwards and say, if their slopes are the same, then the two lines are parallel. And that's the way if and only if works. It allows you to read it forwards and backwards with an if-then. Okay. So by definition, then, I can do this. P double arrow Q is the same thing. What's three lines mean? Equivalent. Equivalent means They mean the same thing, they just might be written a little differently. So P if and only if Q is the same thing as P arrow Q, if P then Q, and Q then P. That's the definition of what if and only if means. It is actually a combination of a lot of little pieces. So it's an abbreviation of if P then Q and if Q then P. So we just say P if and only if Q.
Who uses this type of math? What kind of?
Nobody, but
What
yeah,
kind of
Lawyers.
career?
Lawyers, big one. All right, if we are done, then I will stop. If and only if you pass the last test and did your homework.
Well, I did my homework.
Okay. Here's a cool thing about logic. There is an order of operations. So commas are not always going to be there. You have to kind of understand what's going on. So I'll give you a hint. Ands and or are automatically grouped if there's no commas. So ands and or happen first. If and only if and if thens happen second. So if there's no commas, ands and ors will happen first. If and only ifs and conditionals and biconditionals will happen second. So here, where do you think the comma naturally has to go?
Down in the
Down here?
Well, no,
Right behind the if and only if.
Right behind the if and only if. Because if-thens are going to happen, and this and is going to be grouped. So the comma naturally has to go there. On my test, I'm going to put commas where they go. I'm not going to make them invisible. For the book, though, you got to be a little cautious. Sometimes they want you to figure out where things go.
Repeat what you said one more time. If there is no comma.
If there is no comma, ands and ors have to happen as a group. If and only ifs and if-thens will happen next. So if you see an and, just group the things around the and. But if there's a comma, you have to default to the comma
But you
position.
said you're going to make sure you put it where they on the test.
Mhm.
Okay.
I put commas on the test, so there's, and I don't leave off the words then. Like the book will say, if you are here, I'm at home. They kind of skip over the word then, so I would suggest you put it in there so you can see it.
Okay.
I don't like leaving the word then off. All right, so how many simple statements?
3.
4. We are done. I will stop.
Okay.
You passed the last test. You did your homework. There's 4 simple statements. They are simple statements because none of them have the word not. So this one would be P. This one is going to be Q. This one's going to be R. S. I don't like S because my S's look like 5s, but that's okay. So this is P. This is Q. This is R. This is T. Sure, why not? Be cautious. If you use the shortcut to write it in symbolic form, be careful the word not is not there. If it is, you might want to put like tilde P or tilde Q. That's a shortcut, but I don't want you to use it that often. Okay, so let me write this down. P.
We are done.
We are done.
I mean,
Arrow.
Q.
Q.
Double arrow.
Double arrow. Because of the if and only if.
R.
R. You pass the test.
Upside down.
Upside down V for and.
C.
T. Now, you can't leave that because you don't see the grouping. So I need to group things. Parentheses around.
P and Q.
P and Q. Parentheses around.
R and T.
R and T. And that would be the symbolic form of that horrible statement. Go ahead. Put what in parentheses? No. That would get really weird. I mean, think about it. What would this mean? If I put it in parentheses, what would that mean? Because it would have to happen by itself first. So then R, it just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. So you got to be careful when you're grouping. These symbols never have a parentheses touching it. The only one that will is the tilde. Other than that, if you're dealing with a double, what's it called, a bi-operator, it has to have something on the left, a letter on the left, and a letter on the right. It can't have a parenthesis separating it away. It just wouldn't make any sense.